Welcome to the channel. I'm Miss Muffet. We talk about all things around here. I thought I'd jump on here and give you a few tips on things that you can do to help prepare for a job interview that are going to help you stand out from the rest of the crowd and help you get that job. So I've been working as an HR professional for a little over 10 years now, and before going into the HR career, I worked as an employment counselor and job developer for about 5 years before that. So I've had my fair share of time supporting and coaching job seekers. So I wanted to come on here and share some of my knowledge. Hopefully there will be a few of these tips that you can take away with you, apply to your current job search that will help you get the job that you've always wanted. One thing I always advise is while you are job searching really is your job. There's a lot that goes into a properly conducted job search. There's a lot of effort that needs to be put into that, and it's really something that you should be working on and building on every day until you finally received that job offer that you've been waiting for. Now, when it comes to job searching, there are different stages of the job search process and cycle that are all equally important and together really form that package that you're putting together as a job seeker to sell yourself to the employer. In this video, I'm going to really be focusing on what are some things that you can do before you even have your job interview that's going to give you a really strong start to your job search, and that's going to really help you stand out in the job interview itself. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Before you can even start your job search, you're going to need to have all the tools ready to go that you're going to be using to tell the employers who you are, to sell your skills, and to highlight your experience. And so those things are a resume and a cover letter. I'm not going to be going into the ins and outs of how to create or build a resume in this particular video. If that's something that you're interested in learning more about, please let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to make a follow-up video that talks a little bit about more of the different types of resumes and how to go about structuring a resume. But for this video, we're going to be taking a little bit of a different angle when talking about resumes. Now, your resume is the tool that you use that basically showcases your skills, your experience, and even your extracurricular interests to the employer. This is really kind of presenting the employer with a little snapshot of what you're all about, what your capabilities are. The cover letter is really an opportunity for you to shine even more. So your cover letter should be talking a little bit more about some of the items or skills that you didn't really go into much detail in on your resume. Your cover letter is a great time to showcase your personality a little bit and to do a little bit more of a deep dive in any particular area that you think might be relevant to the job that you're currently applying to. Now, most people will take the time, go on the computer, find a resume template, and attempt putting together a resume on their own, which is fine. I think there's a lot of value in learning how to create your resume on your own because it's a skill that you can take with you and use continuously throughout your job search. But if you really want to be able to stand out amongst the thousands of resumes that the employer might be receiving for one or two positions, you're really going to want to look into getting some professional support in creating a resume that is really going to help you stand out, be specific, and highlight exactly what the employer is looking for when they're skimming through their resumes. The honest truth of it is, employers don't have a lot of time to be spending looking through their resumes. Sometimes, depending on the type of job you're applying to, it might be a computer that's actually going through your resume and just looking for keywords and terms. So having a resume that's professionally done is so important. Working with a professional to create your resume, they'll be able to advise on the type of resume that would be best to highlight your particular skills and experience. There is more than one type, and depending on the industry that you're applying to, that may also dictate how your resume should look. Do you want a more traditional looking resume, or would a more creative, funky looking resume be a little bit more important for this particular job and industry? Trends in resume writing are also always evolving, and so working with a professional, they're going to help you be able to kind of keep up to date on current trends, and they'll make sure that they're double checking for things like spelling errors. That is one of the worst things you can do on your resume, having spelling errors. So they can be that second or third look through for you to make sure your grammar's correct, make sure there's no spelling errors. Rules change a little bit when it comes to resume development too. So working with a professional, they're going to take a look at all of this for you. They're going to help you create a beautiful resume and cover letter. And doing that is really going to help you stand out from the rest, because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't take the extra step to work with a professional to get their resume done. Now, if having the money to be able to pay a professional to do this for you is a concern, there are lots of free services that are usually available in your community. Employment centers are a great resource for you. Most employment centers are nonprofit run, and they will have a resource room in the employment center where you can actually work with an employment counselor most of the time, and you can schedule an appointment with them for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. It really just depends on how much time they'll allot for these type of appointments, but they'll be able to sit down with you and look over your resume with you and give you some pointers and tips on things that you can do, adjustments you can make, things that you can edit to really give your resume the pop that it needs. So I highly suggest looking into your community resources and seeing what's out there for you that's free, so that you don't necessarily have to pay to work with a professional with your resume and cover letter development. A cover letter is another step that a lot of people don't do, and it's mainly because the cover letter does take some effort and time. Cover letter development is a little bit different from resume development, and so you do have to put a little bit more thought into it. It is a time where you do want to show a little bit of your personality, be a little bit more creative, so it does take a little bit more time to develop. But when you do have a really well put together cover letter that complements your resume, because that's something that not a lot of people do, it really does help you stand out. And in fact, a lot of employers will take the time to read the cover letter and just the cover letter. They may call you in from your cover letter alone, having never really read your resume, and wait for the interview to ask you more specifics about your experience. So if you want to boost from the very beginning, make sure you got a killer resume and a killer cover letter ready to go. The next thing that you should be doing long before the job interview is your research. I can't stress enough how important doing your research before any job interview is. And when I say research, I'm really talking about taking 30 minutes, even an hour, and spending time on the computer researching the company that you are going to have that job interview with. So when you're doing your research, you want to be going onto this company's website and taking the time to learn as much as you can about the company or the organization, so that when you're in the interview and they ask you the question that you will always be asked, what do you know about us, or why do you want to work from us, you're going to have a really well put together response ready to go. So some key areas that I highly recommend taking the time to read over from a company's website are their mission and value statement. You'll learn a lot about that organization's focus from reading those two things. You'll want to take some time to learn more about the services and or programs that they run, so that you can highlight on these during the job interview. A question that's often asked in the interview is, why do you want to work for our particular company? What is it about our company that stands out to you? If you've taken the time to read about their services and their programs, you can pull from that, talk about something specific that you've learned from their website that really interested you. So if there's a particular program or initiative that they're working on, you can take from that and elaborate and talk about that during the job interview. Something else that you'll want to take the time to read, if it's available on their website, is their strategic plan. Most companies will have posted on their website the goals they have outlined for the next 2, 3, 5 years. Take the time to read through that, because that's going to give you a really good idea of not only where the company is today, but where they're hoping to be in the next couple years from now. So that's something that you can pull out, and a great topic of conversation during your interview. When the organization asks you, why do you think you'd be a good fit for our company? If you know what their future plans are, you can then talk about some of the skills that you think you're bringing to the table that will help them attain their future plans and reach the goals that they have outlined in their strategic plan. Another great section to take some time and just research on a company's website is their community involvement. What are some of the extra things that they're doing that maybe is less known? A company or organization will often have an upcoming events page, so you can take the time to read about that. You can read about things like, are they heavily involved in the community? If so, what projects do they have going on? Those are always interesting points of conversation during an interview. If the company has a newsletter, that's another great place to read more about some projects that have already come to play or that are coming up that you can also use for great topics of conversation. One area in a job interview where you can easily incorporate some of the information that you've learned from their events page. Often during job interviews, they will ask you, do you have any questions for us? Or is there anything else about our organization that you'd be interested in knowing? This is a great place to let them know, hey, you know what? I've taken the time to read through your newsletter, read through your community development, and I'd really like to learn a little bit more about this initiative, or I have a question about this project that happened a few months ago. That is going to really impress the employer because that is something that most people do not take the time to do. And this also shows the employer that you really truly are interested in who they are and what they do, because you've taken the time to take the extra step and learn not just about the surface level of the company and who they are, but you've also taken the time and you've dug a little bit and you've learned about their interests as well. The third thing that you should also be taking the time to do before a job interview is practice. Practice, practice, practice. This is something that I wish more people would take the time to do. As silly as it may seem, or as embarrassing as it may feel while you're doing it, doing a mock interview with a family or friend before your actual interview with the employer will really help you early on and may bring to light some tendencies that you have, behaviorisms that you may be exhibiting that you weren't even aware of before your actual job interview day. One thing that I used to always make sure that I did with my clients as an employment counselor was to have at least one practice mock interview with them so that by the time they actually got to the job interview with the employer, they were a lot more relaxed and comfortable. Now, the purpose of a mock interview is to practice. A mock interview will run through some pretty regular questions that you will most likely be asked during the job interview so that you can prepare for that. Will also help you identify some habits or behaviors that you may tend to do during a job interview that you were not even aware of until you practiced. Little things like continuously saying during your job interview while you're thinking, that's something that may just happen naturally, and so you may not be aware of it, but when you practice with somebody else, they may be able to pick up on this for you and give you a little bit of advice around that. Some people have a tendency to fidget quite a bit during job interviews, so moving their hands quite a bit. Those are other little behavioral tendencies that perhaps you weren't aware of, but by now having practiced the job interview, you can now come up with some strategies on how to combat that so that they aren't manifesting themselves too often during the job interview with the employer. Mock interviews will also give you the opportunity to practice these questions and develop your answers so that you don't feel too on the spot on interview day. The more you practice your interview, the more relaxed you're going to feel and the more relaxed you're going to seem to the employer during your job interview. So make sure you take the time to practice. You can do this with friends or family, or again, you can tap into free services in your community, employment resource centers, and they will most likely be able to help you schedule a mock interview with them as well so that you can practice with a professional, and so then they can help you prepare a lot better for your job interview day. Last thing I would recommend you do before any job interview is when you get the call from the employer saying that they'd like to invite you in for a job interview, there are a few questions you should be asking on that call to make sure you have all the information you need to be properly prepared for your job interview day. First question, you want to make sure that you've asked what the dress code is for the organization so that you have a very good idea on how they expect you to be dressed for your interview. Some companies have a very strict dress code, others are a lot more casual. So knowing this in advance means that you're going to be able to make sure on the day of your job interview, you are showing up properly dressed and in accordance with the organization's expectation regarding dress code. First impressions are very important. So you want to make sure that you know what the expectation around dress code is before the interview. Second question I would recommend you ask is, are there any documents that you should be bringing to the interview with you? Some companies will want you to bring an extra copy of your resume. Even though you've already mailed it in, they may want you to still bring an extra copy. Some will ask you to bring your references with you. Some may ask you to bring your portfolio, but you need to know all of this in advance. And so if you don't ask, by the time you get to the interview, you may realize too late that there was some supporting documents that the employer was expecting you to bring and you didn't. So make sure that you're asking that during that phone call as well. Make sure that you find out if there is parking available. This can help you save a lot of time and eliminate a lot of stress and can potentially make sure that you're not late for your job interview. You'll want to find out if there's free parking on site or if there's paid parking or if there's no parking so that you can make sure that you give yourself enough time to be able to arrive to your interview on time. If there is no parking available on site, then you'll most likely want to give yourself a little extra time because it may be a little bit challenging to find some parking in the area. But again, knowing this advance is going to save you stress in the long run because the last thing you want to be is late for a job interview. So that's it. Those were a few tips that I wanted to provide that hopefully will help you prepare for your job interview and help you stand out from the competition. If you have other questions that you're curious about that may be related to human resources, maybe related to job searching, whatever it might be, anything HR related, if there are other questions that you may have, please leave your questions in the comments. I would love to hear from them, and who knows, they may inspire a future video for the channel. So please let me know what advice you might be looking for in the field of human resources. Like always, thank you for spending this time with me today, and I will see you in the next video.